In the second lecture on failure modes and effect analysis, we're going to focus on the so-called CAPA, corrective and preventative action process. Many people think of corrective and preventative as one phrase, but what we'll find is that corrective action and preventive action are two separate things. Thinking back on our slide before about risk management, which is a process, one thing to understand is that the CAPA is typically so-called where it all begins. And that is to say that normally what happens there is a complaint or an issue presented to the quality management team, and they have to decide if they need to launch the so-called CAPA process, which includes both corrective and preventative actions. And really this subsystem is, as it indicates here, is to collect and analyze information, and then of course take appropriate effective, corrective, and preventative action. Again, corrective and preventative will be two different types of action, and this is intended to prevent the recurrence of the issues that were recited. One of the best resources for the CAPA and its description is this report UCM 170612 that's available from the FDA. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to say download this report and look at it. It has great flowcharts. It actually describes very clearly exactly what the auditors seek when they're auditing a CAPA process, what are the typical strides and stumbles, what trips people up. And this is an inspection guide. So actually I think this is sort of unique in the sense that, as we talked about last time, the FDA is telling you exactly what they're looking for. They'll tell you exactly how they're going to look for it, and this particular document really outlines that in detail. So not only does it reveal the audit process, but it also tells you a lot about the intended purpose of the CAPA. Remember, CAPAs vary widely from organization to organization, and so this is a tough one to audit, so this receives a lot of attention for any FDA audit usually. There's a second document that I think talks about the basics of the CAPA process, and this is by Joseph Tardal, back from 2004. This again is a wonderful introduction and highlights the key concepts. There was no point in my taking his slides and trying to reformat them. You can download this, and it goes through the difference between corrective action, preventative action, and talks about the basics in a very straightforward fashion, and it is really quite revealing. It's got some good flow charts, so I highly recommend this document. But essentially, let's think about the process again as a hazard and risk analysis process, and specific corporate processes are very similar in many different ways, as we talked about in the very first lecture. But I particularly like this chart because what it does is it shows you that the source and the trigger for a CAPA could be employee suggestions. Many times people think of CAPA as something that only deals with the outside customer feedback, but in fact employees can make suggestions as well from the production floor. Warranty, rework, and return. There could be issues associated with the warranty department, and they make some observations, and that goes to the quality council, and the quality council then has to decide whether they're going to initiate a new CAPA. We could also have non-conforming materials upon incoming raw materials. And of course, simply as a result of management review meetings, issues may come up. Two things we have to think about is that when management takes action, you have to look at the engineering change request system. Was something warranted? And if there is something warranted, then there'll be a change order system that needs to be put in place, and then the problem solved. So this is a great chart. This comes from a tutorial that we've talked about before, but it's a nice diagram because the inputs become the key here for triggering the process, which is standard in many ways. Most companies are going to have an engineering change request for system and a change order system to basically address the issues that presumably are monitored by management. So basically, corrective action is not preventable action. And there are two different issues. So with the ISO 13485 in mind, the two different clauses would read similarly. So corrective action might seem a lot like preventative action. But the best way to think about this is to say, okay, you are presented with an issue, okay? And if the issue is a complaint, internal or external, then you have a corrective action. It could be a customer, could be a field service agent, could be an inside sales rep, could be rejected components on the production floor. But if the issue is a complaint, then you have a corrective action. If the issue, by the way, is a parameter, for instance, a parameter trending to a quality issue, so you do statistical process control charts, you're monitoring certain parameters, they're still within bounds, still within specification, the upper control and lower control limits, still within there, but you see a trend. Then you have an opportunity for preventative action. And this is what requires a sharp eye, and often the auditors will look for, are you monitoring the SBC control charts? Do you see trends of parameters going out of bounds, out of limits? Then, of course, if that's the case, your next step might be to then find the root cause. And, of course, enter the failure modes and effect analysis as a tool to help you establish the root cause, among other things. So essentially, we've quickly gone through the CAPA process because I've sort of punted and I've given you two documents, references to two documents from the FDA. They're superb documents. They're worth downloading and having. It's free of charge, and they are very good. The PowerPoint presentation by the 2014 by Tartar is just really very, very clear, easy to read and go forward with. So again, treat the FDA documents as your anatomical lecture from a CAPA perspective. And what I'd like to do is to now move on to the failure modes and effect analysis in our third and second to last lecture in this series.